Hi, I'm Mark of Flow and Flux Live, and today's 5-minute yoga tip is on Warrior One or Virabhadrasana 1. Warrior One is a very multifaceted pose. So when we're in this physical stance in our lower body, it's practicing some stretch here in the front of the left hip flexor and external rotation here of the right hip flexor, or there's at least a bending here that's happening in the backside of the leg. The upper body needs to maintain its integrity here in the core. And in the upper body, we're doing somewhat of a back bend here. It's not really a back bend though. You're not reaching back, but you are stretching and elongating the muscles of the serratus, as well as strengthening the muscles along the thoracic vertebrae. And we're going to break each part down in steps. Keep in mind, you don't have to do the fullest, deepest version every time. It's probably more important to do the most intelligent version every time. So what I would advise you to do at any given stage of any step, stop at your tension point when you reach there and breathe. If your body allows you to move a little bit deeper after a few breaths, then feel free to go do so. But if your body is staying at that tension point, it's telling you something and you need to respect and honor that so you don't go beyond that edge. You just stay there for the day. And the more you practice it, the more your body will become familiar with it and it'll start to loosen up. And if it never did loosen up, you're still a wonderful person, so who cares? Okay, so setting up for a Warrior One position, I'm going to have my right foot facing the front of the mat here, and my back foot's going to be just inside 90 degrees. You can also have your back heel up and be on your toes. That's how some people like to take the pose as well. It does affect a different line of muscle in the back leg, but neither one is more correct than the other. They're just different, specifically for the back leg. So I'm going to bring my hands here on my hips, and I encourage you to do the same, where your fingertips are pointing forward directly out of the top of your pelvic crests. And I want my pelvis, as much as possible, to work towards squaring towards the front of the mat. You don't have to achieve square. The idea of square is just an idea, but it doesn't actually exist. What's more important is to maintain the action of squaring throughout the pose. It's almost a circular action where my hips are moving in this direction. So I hope you're able to find that as you work the squaring idea here. Now, when people bend this front leg, they'll make one of two mistakes. They'll either bend the front knee and lean forward, and that's okay. That's probably a smarter place to start. Or they'll bend the front leg, but then bend their back. Now, this gets dangerous because they start to collapse and crunch in the lower back. And the lower back, because of its lordotic curve, already receives a lot of pressure. So we want to work away from that. You can start like this if you want, where you're bending your front leg, keep the back leg strong, and it's okay if your pelvis is in this position. But we want to tilt the pelvis up without bending the lower back. So my back is going to stay straight as I tilt the pelvis, and that's going to deepen the stretch here in the front of the left hip flexor. Remember that when your body can't move in a particular direction, the rest of the body will overcompensate for that. So this is a bad compensation for the lack of flexibility here. It's better to maintain the strength in your front and to be leaning forward so that you're not collapsing or crunching in your lower back. You don't even have to bend your front leg as much. That's okay. These are all just ideas. So I'm squaring my hips to the front, bending my front knee, and then tilting my pelvis up while I keep my rib cage engaged. So now there is very little pressure, if at all, in my lower back, and I'm getting a nice deep stretch here in the front of the left hip flexor. So you could argue that yes, this is a back bend in the front of the hip flexor, but it's definitely not a back bend in the lower back. To maintain the integrity of my lower back, I'm going to engage my bandhas, which is Uddiyana Bandha, that's my belly button pulling in, and Mula Bandha, which is lifting up the pelvic floor or contracting the anus. It depends on how you want to interpret it. So hips are squaring to the front, bend the front knee, tilt from the pelvis, belly and lift the pelvic floor. This is already a lot of work, especially the back leg. And the deeper you bend this front knee, the more you want to focus on engaging your quadricep and tilting the pelvis up. That's your lower body. I'm going to switch sides because that's a lot of stretch on the one leg. So for the upper body, we have two lines of muscle that we need to engage, the front and the back of the body. To engage the front of the body, when your arms are up in this position, and it's okay, like what we don't want to do is do this and reach back with the hands and crunch the lower back like we mentioned before. You want to, if anything, chop the arms forward. It's okay if your hands don't even come up that far. I've seen some people do Warrior One with their hands up here in this position. That's fine. So wherever you are here, chop the arms forward as if you were pushing into a wall. Because when you're pushing into a wall, you're engaging the entire front line of the body. So here's a trick now. As you chop the arms forward, pull your belly in, your rib cage back, and your tail forward. So the rib cage is going to move back, the tail is going to move forward. So that again is maintaining strength in my lower back. Chop, ribs back, tail forward. It's all working the front line of the body. To engage the back line of the body, this is just a fun setup tip you can use. Interlace your fingers behind the head, squeeze the elbows in, and I'll just face the screen for this one. When you're in warrior pose, bring the elbows in. So this is a collapse. This means the shoulder blades are pinching on the thoracic vertebrae, so we don't want that. We want the shoulder blades to move away from the thoracic spine so it has room to elongate. Push the head back, and when you push the head back into the hands, resist strongly with your hands, because that's going to engage the muscles along the thoracic vertebrae to provide some length along the back side of the body. So now you can start here. I have my legs set up, I have my pelvis set up. I'm not going too deep in that front knee just yet. I'm going to squeeze the elbows in, push my head back, and grow tall with that energy. Keep the elbows in, and as you release the elbows, you can chop your arms forward to engage that front line. Pelvis is still tilting up. In this case now, my left hip back and right hip forward, so my hips still have that circular motion. Don't ever feel like you have to go deeper in a pose. So it's okay if your warrior starts off like this. And then very slowly, you start to add different elements. But when you find there's pain or collapse, you have to respond to that and come out. That's the 5-minute yoga tip. I think I went a little bit over time again, but I hope that serves your practice. If you have any other questions about any other poses that you'd like to ask, please feel free to email me and I'll be happy to respond to them in a subsequent video. That's all for now.